Good evening. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and onto our podcast and our YouTube channel. We record in audio only. Feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a resource if you missed the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so that you can follow along. Tonight we will read Appendix 2. We decided to end our entire study making week 94 reading the spiritual experience. The study will be found on pages 567 and 568. And do we have any announcements?
Well, I guess I gotta unmute myself. Hi family, my name is Jamie, very grateful recovered alcoholic. Couple of announcements. Just had post-conference report with our delegate here, and he told us all the things that happened in New York and so on. He will be sending me the PowerPoint presentation. It was a Zoom recording, and I can make that available to any of you who would like to know what they did in New York and why they did it, what our delegate voted for, and what our delegate voted against. It is a very good snapshot, a very concise snapshot of the process that happens after everything leaves our groups, our districts, and our areas. So I'll be happy to share that with you when I get it. And the next announcement is Pickle Party! Pppbbsg here at my house. 4th of July, y'all are welcome. People roll in anywhere from the 29th of the month through the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and stay and hang out, and we love on each other and just have a good time, have lots of meetings, fellowship, games, wall paintings, whatever strikes us. So it's a very great event. Hope you all can make it. And that's what I got for announcements. So moving along, and once again, good evening, family. My name is Jamie. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of meditation followed by our family's fog light prayer.
And I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Trish. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a moment to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing is to not distract yourself, but most likely is to not distract yourself. We suggest we all observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. A friendly reminder that absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share, and we will call on you in the order that hands are raised.
From the foreword to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are: focus on your breath and posture, breathe in God, and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God and let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study.
And let's invite those cute little monks in for the 252nd week in a row to do what they do so well. Enjoy your time with God, folks. And on your screen in front of you is our family's Foglight prayer for those of you who would like to join us. Foglight prayer. God, let your love shine through us like a foglight, so that those that are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen.
Let's have our secretary's report. Come on in, Susan.
Hey everybody, my name is Susan and I'm your recovered alcoholic secretary. I've asked Nancy to read the recovered statement. We read this notice to explain why many people in this group identify as recovered rather than recovering and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Nancy.
Nancy, alcoholic, recovered. We are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered, but not cured. That presents a conflict in some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we aren't cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime. But we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, rather than in his body. Page 23. We are now saying where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for joining us tonight. We meet here every Tuesday starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Verbal Fellowship Cage, where we chatter for an hour before the start of the meeting. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our Big Book study starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. We ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the sound of the foghorn. We take our Big Book study seriously because of this. Chat will be disabled during the study. In the 1940s, when the only elements of sobriety were God, a Big Book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, the success rate was as follows. From the forward to the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapse, and the remainder of those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of people joining us for the first time tonight?
No one new tonight.
Okay. And then the recovered alcoholics? All right, these are your potential sponsors. Is anyone celebrating a milestone this week?
I don't see anybody.
Don't say anybody.
It usually requires, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I said I don't see anybody.
If you require a Big Book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by buzzard mail. Delivery time is questionable. Please remember to practice our seventh tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal posted in chat and on the screen. Our suggestion is to purchase a Big Book and take an untreated alcoholic through the program of recovery. Please visit our website posted in chat. Thank you and see you next week.
Thank you, Susan. We'll see somebody next week. I'd like to everyone to give Susan a big hand and thank her for being our secretary for the last 13 weeks. I forget I forget who's doing next week, but we'll figure it out between now and then. I want to before we move on. I just want to make a quick mention, folks, that when you're doing this back and forth in your microphone and so on, your voice goes in and out and in and out, and sometimes we have unstable internet connection, and that seems to make it even worse. So just please be aware of that, and shuffling papers or playing tiddlywinks or whatever you might be doing in the background, because we do podcast the meeting, and if not, it makes it for a horrible recording. So from Chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is we've discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
While this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
Before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 9. Tonight, let's take a quick look at Tradition 10. Please refer to page 562 of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And come on in, Tim. Did you? There you are.
Tim, are you frozen? Timmy, we can't hear you. Timmy, can you hear us?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
No, Jimmy. I'm sorry. I'm talking to Timmy. Timmy, can you hear
Oh, I'm
us?
sorry.
All right, Lisa. Tim. Wait. Tim, can you hear us? Okay, Lisa. Could you do Tradition 10, please? Tim's obviously having some problems.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic and I'm your traditionalist. Tonight we're on step Tradition 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never to be drawn into public controversy. And the long form. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views whatever. I got a little read here. The beauty of Tradition 10. Sobriety in AA is the first thing in my life that has really worked. I'm grateful to fellow AAs who have shown me how not to drink on a daily basis, and to alcoholics I've never met who established our steps, traditions, and concepts for world service. When I live these principles to the best of my ability, they keep me sober and in touch with the God of my understanding. I'm especially grateful for Tradition 10 where it is suggested that AA groups never get involved in the messy business of debating outside issues. The wonderful extra implied by this tradition is that I, as an individual recovering alcoholic, am free to simply enjoy sobriety in AA without having to defend my position on any outside issue. Today, I'm sober and grateful for what it was like, what happened, and what it is like now. I'm even grateful to my parents who put up with me as an active alcoholic while also living with their own illnesses. But I'm especially grateful to the alcoholics who founded this fellowship and gave us the guidelines by which we run our groups. Tradition 10 frees AAs to concentrate on what we have in common: recovery, unity, service, rather than waste time debating outside issues. Angry debate of things over which we have no power can only serve to split us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And Art is it's time for our weekly segment of That Ain't in the Book. And we hear a lot of stuff said in meetings that can't be reconciled with the program as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things we often hear is there are no musts in the program. So Art is going to come in and tell us what it has to say on page 152.
Hello everybody, my name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And what it says here is, I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I?
Thank you, Art. As we study, please make use of the pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused as we study the Big Book, we use the Big Book Study Guide, prepared by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
And tonight we are going to be reading Appendix 2, and we decided to end our entire study, making week 94 the reading of the spiritual experience. And the study will then be on pages 567 and 568. And after those pages are read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back on our study portion that's going to be read by Bill. And the answers to the questions, unless otherwise, will be one sentence unless otherwise specified, and multi-part questions are simply a one-sentence answer split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation.
Basically, in English, what that means is we are going to read the material once through and then dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives you a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we've completed the study, we open up for comment, questions, and observations based on what was just read. If you have spiritual experiences with this information, you are free to share. Please keep your share on topic and under 5 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, you may hear a timer beep to let you know that your time is finished.
However, Big Book Study, this is one of my favorite lines in the whole script. However, Big Book Study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, for an example with the sponsor, please don't be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzards nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the pages studied, which brings us to the words of one of our co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group.
We arrived at this point. Long time ago, when I was a little boy, before I became a truck driver, there were 2 alcoholics. Oh, no, sorry, that's a different story. Just thought I'd throw a little humor in there. We started this meeting in 2020 when COVID hit right here in my house. And we have been very blessed on our journey of the last little over 5 years of what we have been doing. And the format that we use tonight is the format that we use for every page that we study line by line with questions out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It has been an amazing journey, and as Trish said earlier, it's a 94-week book study, and tonight we will be doing the spiritual experience as a standalone meeting, even though we're directed throughout the study to go to the spiritual experience 3 different times, and we do the same thing those 3 different times that we are doing tonight. That being said, in our next season, it will become a 96-week study, and the reason for that is while we do the traditions 6 a night for 2 weeks, we have decided to split that up into 3 a night over 4 weeks. The reason being is because there's a lot of information, especially once you get into the longer traditions, and there is much to be said on those traditions. So I hope you will come back after tonight and join us for starting season 4 next year, which I think is pretty profound considering we will be a couple of days away from the 4th of July, and we have freedom from alcohol. What a wonderful thing. So I will shut up with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Before we start the reading, we will need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you would like to be one of our answer readers. And just a reminder, please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and our YouTube channel. So come on in, Bill, with the reading.
Alcoholic. Spiritual experience. The term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes, or religious experiences, must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it is not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realized that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Many of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer.
Thank you so much for your service tonight, Bill. Greatly appreciated, my friend. Someone added their name to the list. Hang on, let me write that down. Okay. Our batting order tonight will be Linda, Nancy, Art, Kenny. Billy, where'd you go, William? Did you lower your hand? Or did you want to answer questions tonight, William?
No, I'm going to listen tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Then one name was replaced with another name. So, all right. So then it's going to be Linda, Nancy, Art, Kenny, and Billy tonight. So, and Trish has a comment to open up with, and we'll have a few comments and then a closing comment at the end of all of it.
So the opening comment, the only significant change that has been made in the basic text of the Big Book, the first 164 pages plus the doctor's opinion, is the one that produced the need for Appendix 2. Step 12 in the first printing read, having had a spiritual experience as the result of this course of action. In reading Bill's story, we read where he had a sudden spiritual experience as the result of these steps. Dr. Bob, on the other hand, had a very slowly developed spiritual awakening. Many of those reading the first printing of the Big Book were not experiencing Bill's hot flash and felt that they were missing something. To correct that misconception, Bill reworded Step 12 to what it now reads and added Appendix 2 as an explanation in the second printing of the first edition. Some members believe that they have had a spiritual experience with each individual step. This results in 11 separate spiritual experiences that collectively awaken our sleeping spirit by the time we get to Step 12.
Thank you, Trish. Art, you probably recognize where that last part came from. Okay, all of you can unmute, and we are going to move on to the questions, please. Linda, kicking it off with you. This conclusion is what? Read the whole paragraph, please.
The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms.
Keep going.
Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous.
Thank you, and that was my fault. I missed read 2 whole paragraphs, so that's my bad. See, folks, I am not perfect. Nancy, coming to you. In the stories in the first chapters, which spiritual event was described?
In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described.
Thank you. And Art, did most alcoholics believe that they too must have a spiritual experience?
Though it was not our intent to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook.
Thank you. Kenny, come to you, young man. Are such transformations frequent?
Among our rapid growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule.
Thank you. And Billy, 2-part question. A, what do most of our members experience? And B, why did William James call it that?
Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Do you want me to read the next part?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda, moving back to you. Very often, who are the first to notice the change that take place? Linda, you're muted.
Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself.
Thank you. Nancy, two-part question. A, what does the alcoholic finally realize? And B, could have he accomplished this himself?
He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, but such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone.
Thank you. And Art, moving to you, sir. What could seldom have been accomplished by self-discipline?
What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline.
Thank you. Kenny, two-part question. A, with few exceptions, what do we all tap into? And B, what do they identify this to be?
With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unexpected inner resource which they presently identified with their own conception of a power greater than themselves.
Thank you. Top of page 568. Billy, what do most of us think?
Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience.
Thank you. Nancy, Linda.
Oh, Linda.
What do religious folks call it?
Our more religious members call it God consciousness.
Thank you. Nancy, two-part question. What do we wish to say emphatically to any alcoholic? And B, what is one condition the alcoholic must meet?
Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honesty facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts.
Thank you. Art, what will defeat an alcoholic?
He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial.
Thank you. And Kenny, what is it that no one should have difficulty with?
We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program.
Thank you. And Billy, coming to you. What are the essentials of recovery?
Willingness, honesty, and an open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery.
Thank you.
Many people talk about the how of the program: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. However, the spiritual experience shows us that it's the who of the program: the willingness, honesty, and the open-mindedness. The who is the God of our understanding. I need to be willing to come into the doors and listen to the honesty before I could become open-minded enough to surrender to become recovered from the hopeless state of mind and body.
Thank you, Trish. And Linda, coming back to you. How important are they?
This for me,
Yes, Linda, how important are they?
but these are indispensable.
Thank you. Nancy, what will keep a person in everlasting ignorance?
There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer.
Thank you. And I should have said And Nancy, you get the final question of the entire study.
Yay!
Thank you all. Trish has a closing comment. Everybody can remute themselves and lower their hands.
And our closing comment. Alcoholics Anonymous is far more than a 12-step program. It is a spiritual program comprised by 12 traditions grouped in 12s, or comprised by spiritual principles grouped in 12s. First, we are given the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which provide the suffering alcoholic with clear-cut directions for recovery from the fatal malady of alcoholism. We are then given the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, which establish the boundaries for the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the way it lives and grows. We are then presented with the 12 concepts of Alcoholics Anonymous by means which AA serves suffering alcoholics around the world. These make up the 3 legacies of Alcoholics Anonymous: recovery, unity, and service. So in reality, AA is a 36-step program. But if AA is made up in sets of 12, why only 11 chapters? The rest of our basic text is comprised of the stories of the hopeless alcoholics who adopted this program as a way of life and recovered to live a full and useful life. The chapter 12 in your bit book will be your story. So how will it read? Because it is now up to you to write your story. Will you be one of those who can be humble enough to become a student and practitioner of this big book, thereby living a life of purpose? If so, you will make the difference in the lives of many people as you travel through life, just as Bill W. and Dr. Bob did. Will you be one of those willing to bet your life on the fellowship of AA and just go to meetings, hoping against hope that you will not be one of the many who fail to remain sober, who return to the miserable life of just living for the next drink, maybe never to return? Or will you be one of those who believes they are above all this fellowship or program and this God stuff? If you are one of those, you are likely never to see this page. But if you do see this page and can realize that the study you have just completed may produce for you that which it did for the authors of this book, why not give it your very best try? Yes, it will mean some inconvenience and interruptions in your daily life. But if you can sense that you drank to change the way you thought and the way you felt, and that option is no longer available to you, isn't it worth the time and effort to see if this program might not do all those things for you that you cannot do for yourself, to have a solution to all your problems? The one thing we know is that when we arrive at AA, we will serve a purpose. What purpose will your arrival demonstrate? Will your demonstration be one of success, or will it be a failure? We paid a hell of a price to get here. Shouldn't we be willing to pay the price to stay here? It is far less painful. Rarely have we seen a person fail to find both physical sobriety and emotional sobriety who has carefully followed the directions in the big book. Try it. You too just might like it. We recover by the steps we take, not the meetings we make. It is much easier to stay sober than it is to try to sober up.
Thank you so much, Trish, and thank you all for your participation tonight. And now it is time for a raise of hands to come in and share your experience, strength, and hope. And Kenny, I got a feeling you didn't drop your hand, but you are more than welcome to come in and be the first share tonight.
I'm Kenny, I'm an alcoholic. I meant to drop my hand, but I'll try to share. As far as spiritual experience, I don't know if I had a spiritual experience. I believe mine is more of an awakening. You know, the longer I stay around, the more I practice this program, the better I feel, and the more connected I feel to my higher power and to people. You know, I don't longer do the things I used to do, and each day I ask God to help me with my thoughts, because even at this stage of the game, I can have crazy thoughts. You know, that's why I know I'm not cured, but I know I've gotten better because I realized this and I realize that I don't have the power to change certain things, and I go to a power greater than myself. You know, life for me has gotten very good. You know, I can't complain. I have a roof over my head. I have an income. I have a relationship with my family that I didn't have before, and I can touch certain people's lives. You know, and I have several people who touch my life who stay in contact with me on a daily basis, and care about my sobriety as I care about theirs. And that's all I got to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny. Glad you are with us. Pinky Pickles, welcome.
Hi, Melissa, recovered alcoholic. I have kids in my house, so if they come up and start talking, that's my life. But you know what? That is a result of this way of life, because without the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and I'm learning the concepts. When I came in the rooms almost 5 years ago, I was playing with fire. I had already lost my oldest daughter, and I had no idea what was going to happen to my youngest two. You know, alcohol was taking my life piece by piece. But I found the spiritual program of action, and I had a spiritual awakening, and I have spiritual experiences. I still have spiritual awakenings, but it says in there, and in my book I crossed out he, and I put Alyssa has had a profound reaction, or her profound reaction to life. I'm getting distracted, but that part of it, because I no longer react the way that I used to. I'm more patient. I'm more tolerant. I have love for everybody. I don't necessarily like everybody. I don't have to, but I show them love and tolerance. I don't blame other people for my problems today. You know, I take accountability for my actions. I don't drown them in the drink. That is a profound alteration in my reaction to life. It absolutely is. Today, I get to have kids in my house. I'm reestablishing a relationship with my oldest daughter after 7 years of no contact. You know, it doesn't matter what life tries to throw at me, because life is life. I get to move through it all, and I get to learn from it. I don't have problems or difficulties today. God gives me opportunities to apply the tools that he gives me. And it's absolutely amazing. Like, I don't, even in situations where other people point out the negative right away, my mind goes automatically to the positive. You know, I'll give you an example. Yes, I'm reestablishing a relationship with my oldest daughter, but she doesn't necessarily like to talk on the phone, and she can end the call at any time. And when I call on Sunday nights, her thing is to say, I don't feel like talking today. And that's okay. Because you know what? Because I'm sober, because of this way of life, I get to call her. I get to hear her voice. You know, those are the positive things. Like, those are things that my alcoholism took away from me. 5 years ago when I came in these rooms, I had no chance of even being able to call her, to hear her voice, to see her once a month. That wasn't what my disease wanted, and it wasn't what it was giving me. Absolutely not. It was taking things away from me. And, you know, today I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it's not because of the things I have. It's because of God's grace. It's because of God's presence. You know, God consciousness. I'm not really a religious person, because religions are man-made and people are fallible, just like me. You know, the spiritual program of action gave me that direct connection to God. I don't have to go to a pastor. I don't have to have anybody in between. I get to go right to the power source. So it's absolutely amazing. I know I'm probably hitting 4 minutes, so thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Alyssa. Glad you are with us tonight. Linda, come on in. Welcome. Linda?
I'm talking away and I have myself on mute. Okay, my name is Linda. I'm an alcoholic. I like this, this page and a half about the spiritual experience. And it doesn't go deep into it. It just touches on it. But it talks about the God consciousness. And often people ask about that God conscious, and it's mentioned twice here. Is mentioned twice. It says, though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Then it says here on the next page, most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. So for me, going through the steps is what bring me closer to God. That's what bring me closer to God, because I was too far away from God. God had never moved. God was close to me, but I wasn't close to God. I wasn't allowing God to do God's work. I was being rebellious. I was being indifferent. And it says it right in here. It says that if we have that I'm not going to go through it to look for it, but just being indifferent to the program, being stubborn, not being willing, not being open-minded, trying to think that I know everything, and I'm going to look at it from my viewpoint and not try to see it from a different viewpoint, to put on a different pair of glasses and look at it differently and to try to understand it differently. If I do that, if I can go ahead and I can just allow a little bit of information to get in, then I can understand what's going on. Then I can understand, what this spirituality of the program is. Then I can understand where my recovery is going to begin. Where's my recovery going to begin? When am I going to let go? When am I going to give it to God? When am I going to allow him to do his work? When am I going to stop playing tug of war with God? When am I going to trust? When am I going to understand that, this is the reason why I'm here in AA, because of my God. Of course I look at it differently now, 30-something years later, but at first I didn't understand it. I lived on self-will. I ran on self-will. I operated on self-will. Self-will was me, me, me. I had a problem. I figured it out. That was it. Only prayed to God when it was a foxhole prayer. Thank God that I learned in AA that's not what God is for. He's not for your foxhole prayers. God is bigger than that. And the steps is what caused me to have a change of heart, to have a change of the mindset. And as we change our perception on things and we start to get trust, then we can get that spiritual part of the program. Then the God consciousness comes in. And then it says right here, I have to be willing. I like what someone was saying. I like what Ms. Toe Tap and Pickle Trish said. I like what she said about the willingness, the honesty, and the open-mindedness. You have to have one to get to the other. And then you have to have another one to get to that. And then it all goes back into a circle again. But I didn't understand all that when I came in. It was just too much for my brain. And I had to take this program in at little chunks. But as time went on, and as I became more and more sober, and I listened to more and more spiritual experiences, and I had them myself, then I understood. So I can read this today, and then next month I can read it and I can get something different from it. And then I can read it again maybe a couple of months later and get something different. And the reason why is because I will change and I will grow in my spirituality and in my recovery. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for being part of our book study, and I hope you will join us next year. Jimmy, come on in, my friend. Here, let me send you an unmute. See if that works.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jimmy, and I am an alcoholic, and I'm grateful to be here with you guys this evening from Arizona. And, I remember, after I quit fighting this program and actually started accepting that I was an alcoholic and I got all in this program, my daughter was home in January from the Navy, and I had just got off my 4th relapse, and then she went back to the Navy, but something brought her back in, like, let's say, her sister's wedding. So she come home. They let her come. And she was hanging out at the house for about a week. And I remember she said to me, she said, "You don't seem to be as angry as you used to be." And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm still the same person." She said, "No, you're not the same person. You're not angry." And for years she had seen an angry dad. You know, not that I never physically abused my wife or daughters, but you know, verbally I used to be pretty mean, but especially in a blackout. But she did notice a change in me, because I had noticed it in myself. And you know, I didn't have a Bill Wilson spiritual awakening. You know, mine would be, you know, as the result of working these steps. But even my co-driver that spends a lot of time with me, he noticed a difference. And he said, "You don't seem to be the guy I rode with for the last 3 years." And so, yeah, people on the outside can notice when, you know, I stopped overthinking this program and I started doing what, you know, this program asked, and I had the willingness to do it. And, you know, I had to get honest with myself too. That wasn't an easy thing. But I do know my sponsor had me read the 3rd step prayer every day. And, you know, I had to get out of self-will. And there was a lot of things in that did, you know, started working. And I kept coming back. And I think there's a 24-hour day reading. As Trish read, you know, we paid a pretty high price to get in here. You know, shouldn't we pay one to do it? And there's a 24-hour day reading. I don't know where it is, but it says, if I spend half the time working this program as I did in my alcoholism, I could be successful. It didn't say I had to spend all my time, just half. And I mean, so I do have to put in some homework, and I do have to do my part. And, you know, I still can't believe that, you know, I have 4 years, but I said something to a guy the other day. I said, you know, we have choices. And the best choice I ever did make was to pick up the telephone and call a man from AA and walk through the doors of this program. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy. Bill, come on in.
Triple alcoholic, 9 days behind the king of the pickles. As far as my last drink, doesn't mean I know much, because we know only a little. And if there's 2 million members of Alcoholics Anonymous, then I know 1/2 millionth of only a little. So I've been experienced every which way but loose, and it's a good thing, because I need every form of spiritual experience that I could get. I think the first one, standing at my sister's doorstep with Officer Flores waiting for me to sign a promise to appear, and telling me about his brother. He said his brother has a problem like I have. And his brother's serving time in a Tascadero State Mental Facility for the criminally insane. And that if I don't do something about my problem, I'll be going there or someplace like it. And then he took the promise to appear and got in his squad car and drove off. And it was right after that I ended up in an AA meeting for the right reason. I had been in an AA meeting just recently, before that in September of '90, to get a court card signed. I had to get 6 signatures for this really angry man dressed in black, and I don't mean Johnny Cash either. And, you know, that's the beating that I had to take. You know, that self-will, beer, and drinking alcohol combined to beat me down to my knees, to where I was willing to do this. what is this? This is joining Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I find out that I'm allergic to alcohol, and I find out even more good news. Not that that's good news, but it's good news that I know that. Because I find out that there's a way out from under this thing. This allergy and mental obsession. And that's through this spiritual experience or spiritual awakening or psychic change or whatever you want to call it. And I was awakened one morning to the shock of my life. And it was just like what happened to Bill in Towns Hospital. And that was not going to be good enough to keep me sober. I needed a continual educational variety of spiritual experiences. I needed a spiritual experience to keep me coming back to get more. Because if this is working, I want more of it. I always wanted more of everything before. And now I'm finding something that's good. Spiritual experience. And that frees me, continues to free me from not only alcohol, but it frees me from self, which was the initial problem anyway, according to our book. My core issue is selfishness and self-centeredness. So, all I can say is, God as I understand him, step 3, whereas we understood him, I don't know how many people understand who that we is in step 3. We understood him. It's not me. It's not anybody in this meeting. In fact, it's not even anybody that's alive. The we in step 3 is the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous who signed off on this. That's who that we is. And the good news about that, which is even better news, is it explains in the spiritual experience that I just read what the concept of the first 100 members is. An untapped inner resource, which we presently identify as a power greater than ourselves. We don't even have to figure out what the first 100 members were talking about when they said their understanding of God. They tell us right there in the spiritual experience. And I don't know about you, but I was confused when I got here. It's very helpful to be deconfused on this stuff. That doesn't mean I necessarily have to accept the first 100 members' understanding of God. But it's nice to know what their understanding was, and I'll keep coming back. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for your service tonight. Trish, thanks for calling Bill in. The car alarm was going off, so I had to go do the emergency rescue on it. And you're right, Bill. The we is the experience of the first 100. Come on in, toe tapping.
I'm Trish, and I'm an alcoholic. When I walked through the doors of AA, I had a God awareness. Nowhere's near a God consciousness, and wasn't looking for a God consciousness, and frankly, I didn't want one anyway. But as I started taking the steps, a few times, I grew into that God consciousness and learned how to tap into that unsuspected inner resource. Because it's that inner resource of God within me and that inner resource of strength that I get that's going to give me the ability to get through things that I don't think I can, that I didn't think I could at the time that they happened. And it's through that God consciousness compared to God awareness that, I've done that growing. And, I talked about, and someone mentioned it quite often, the friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. I would have people tell me all the time, you're growing so much, you're doing great things, and sometimes I would scoff and say, yeah, right, I'm not doing much of anything. But they saw the growth. And each time I take a step in growth, it's a step closer to that God and that God consciousness. And I'm never going to know who or what God is, but I am aware of God in my life today. And that awareness has given me that personality change that's sufficient to bring about the recovery from alcoholism. You know, sometimes that God consciousness came quickly to me, and other days it just seems to be dragging along at a snail's pace. But I know without a shadow of a doubt in my life today, I know that I have a relationship with a God. And not just an awareness that God exists. God's out there somewhere, I know He's there. But today God lives here. And I know that, I've been told that. And it's that relationship with God that gives me that inner resource to do whatever is put in front of me in life, to get through whatever is put in front of me in life. And it's through that growth that I can then pass on the experience to other people. You know, I have that reliance on the who today, not the how. You know, and I love that last comment. I had to be willing to walk into these doors, to listen to your honesty, so that I could then become open-minded enough to become honest with you and with myself. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish, and a special thanks to you for all of your hard work in this book study and everything that we do. It's important to acknowledge it because you do so much behind the scenes in everything that we do. It wouldn't work without you. Come on in, Gandalf the Red Pickle.
Well, I'm already here. I want to say thank you to you guys too and stuff for putting this on and putting it together and everything. But you know, it wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't coming from Gandalf the Red Pickle. You know that his name is Donald and he's still an alcoholic. And the spiritual experience, man. Oh wow, the epitomes, or not the epitome, I'm trying to think of the word for it and stuff. I had it here and stuff, and it wasn't that. It was epiphany. That's the word I'm looking for. You know, the God shots, you know, whatever you want to call it. The realization. You know, a lot of times we don't get it, and then we realize it, and then boom, we've got it. You know, it's just like whenever we realized that we were alcoholics. You know, we had to change. We had to do something. We realized that and said it out loud, and it makes a difference. So, you know, whenever I first had a spiritual moment that that first one and stuff is like OMG with capital O, capital M, capital G. You know, it's like I realized that I had it. And then, you know, it's like I started having it more and more and more once I realized what it was, where I get the connection between point A and point B and put it together with everything that's in the middle. You know, it's like whenever you think about how many lives are really touched by just one thing, you know, it's just amazing. There was a show back in the day and stuff on PBS called Connections. And, you know, you think about something from a farmer, you know, that everything that a farmer has to do and stuff, you know, to get one cucumber. I'm just going to use that because we're all pickles. You know, for us to get a pickle or a cucumber, you know, what does it take for us to get it once we get it in our hand? You know, it has to go to the supermarket, touches all the people there, you know, that sells it, you know, and da 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 da, and going all the way back to the farmer. Well, it starts way before the farmer. You know, it talks. You know, it goes back to where did the farmer get all his equipment? How many people goes into making that equipment? And then so on and so forth and stuff, you know. It's just amazing though. And Trish, you know, you talked about the price that we paid to get here. And I think I overpaid. Because I should have been here years and years and years before. But I know that it was my price I had to pay. And once I did get here and stuff, you know, I had that spiritual moment. It's like, oh my gosh, that was way too much. I could have got in at an earlier date and not have paid everything that I have in my life. So I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Donald. Glad you are here. Art, welcome, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And this explanation of the spiritual experience is one of my favorite parts of the book, because here we discover that there's more than one way to get to a spiritual awakening. There are many paths to that spiritual awakening. My first realization that I needed something of a spiritual awakening, and then was when I had my last drink, and it became very obvious to me that I really am an alcoholic. Up until that time, I had debated: am I a real alcoholic, or am I just fooling myself? But at that moment, when I was able to take the first step, is when the obsession to drink left. And I haven't had to drink since. But that was a long time coming. And and I knew I'd missed something along the way, and I didn't know what it was. And when I came across the statement in the book that talks about we're never cured of alcoholism, but what we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition, I didn't understand what that meant. But I somehow knew that that was what was missing in my life. That made it impossible for me to not drink given a certain set of circumstances. And like it explains in that in the spiritual experience, most of us, in fact, although it does say that these sudden and dramatic experiences, such as is described in Bill's story, are frequent, but not the rule. So for most of us, it's more like what is described in Dr. Bob's story, the gradual and more educational variety is spoken of with in the what we read tonight. And so the educational variety, I believe, is what happens to me, or what happened to me, as the result of taking the steps. And so each step as I go through them gives me a spiritual experience. But then in the 12th step it talks about having a spiritual awakening. And I believe that's the result of these little mini spiritual awakenings that happen at each step. I heard somebody talk about one time that Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has one big flaw. And that is that it's soluble in alcohol. In other words, if I take a drink, it all goes away. That really isn't a flaw. That's by design, and it's what we have to learn. And some of us have more difficult time with it than others, but at the same time, I have to understand that this is not the only way to arrive at a spiritual awakening. I know I have a number of people that I know, some friends and some acquaintances, that didn't have to go through what I did. They were able to get it in church. Never had to experiment with the consumption of alcohol. There are those also out there who never experimented with the consumption of alcohol but have never had a spiritual awakening. I can't explain all that. But what I do know for sure is that as I look back over my life, even when I was out there experimenting with alcohol, God was involved in my life, even though I didn't always admit it. And so what I've discovered here in Alcoholics Anonymous is that He's always there, but if I refuse to acknowledge Him, my life becomes miserable and I become desperate. And when I acknowledge His presence, I get to be free. And I have come to a place now, and it hasn't always been this way. But at this point in my life, I've come to a place where, you know, I don't have to wait for whatever it is going on to be over with before I can see the hand of God in my life. I've come to trust that whatever happens in my life, this is an experience that I'm supposed to have. And it may not be comfortable. Sometimes the only way we can grow is through discomfort. And so as I continue on in life, I discover that this spiritual awakening is something that has to be nurtured and needs to be pursued in a way that allows me to learn to trust this higher power that I call God. And when I learn that lesson and I learn how to trust, then I'm truly free. And I don't have to worry about what's going on in the world, and I don't have to worry about what may be happening in my own personal life. It's not something that I have to worry about because I've already acknowledged that God is in control, not me. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. Because I always wanted to be in control. And I always thought that I could be. But later in life I learned I can't be in control. I'm not qualified to take control of anything. Perhaps most importantly, my own life. So thank you.
Thank you, Art. Glad you are here. Billy.
Hi, everybody. My name's Billy, an alcoholic. What a great reading and great shares so far tonight. I'm glad I looked at the clock and went, oh, laundry will have to wait till this, and scooted upstairs to get here. Because I don't put a lot of thought. You know, I get up in the morning. Hey, God, tag, you're it. You drive. You know, that's just, you know, the way I do it. I don't spend a lot of time and a lot of depth on my morning prayers because I'm really trying to get to work on time. Even the very last day at work for the year. So, which was today. Yay, finally, I'm sprung. Tonight I was also filling out these paperwork. My doctor and others have been trying to get me to fill this stuff out for years. I'm a cancer survivor, so, you know, they've been trying to get me to name somebody as the one to speak for me if I can't speak for myself and all that stuff. And well, I just didn't want to do it. Didn't want to get around to it. Didn't want to face that part of living. And because I never planned on getting this old to begin with. So, in any case, so I'm going over the questions and I'm confused about what do they mean by this, that, and the other. And my son and I were talking it over because he gets the nod. The person who's got to tell people what to do with me if I can't tell them myself. And the past year since my dad died and during his death, some things happened that really solidified what I do and don't want. And so I was going over the paperwork and started to finally fill it out. I probably got 3 or 4 copies floating around here and some get around to it pile. I think they give me one every single year. So, yeah, I had one and I started filling it out. It's not done because I didn't understand some of the questions. We talked about it. Now I understand them better. Because somebody's got to know what to do. I'm about to set out on this road trip by myself. Now, when I was young and dumb, even in early sobriety, I road tripped all over the place to sober events, to meet people I'd never met before and whatnot. But it's a couple of decades later, and I've been pretty kind of squirrely and nervous about this trip down to Tennessee. I don't know why, but I was. No, because I'm dragging along a camper in my Batmobile, and that's why I'm kind of squirrely, because this part of the adventure is new and different. So I'll get this paperwork finished before this weekend. And, but I'm really psyched. I can't wait to leave, but I got to do some things around here for the next couple of days. So blast off is Monday morning. Try to get about halfway there Monday. Stop in northern Pennsylvania, not southern Pennsylvania. And it's all up to God. Where am I going to stop for the night, the first night? I don't know. Although I've been researching a bunch of choices, God will help me figure it out. When I'm tired enough, I'll know. And thank God for my first sober. my first sponsor in sobriety. Because she told me stuff. You know, I'd ask a lot of questions like, what am I supposed to do with that information that some old timer said in a meeting? And I think one of her favorite lines was, oh, don't listen to that old codger. He doesn't even go to big book meetings. Sometimes she had shorter sentences that said the same thing. Pretty much anybody that didn't go to big book meetings and didn't go to step meetings and didn't read this stuff frequently, I should not, you know, I shouldn't pay much attention to them because they're interpreting. They're not studying. And that has saved me because after a few decades, you know, there's been a few people here and there and the other that said, oh, the only God to get in sobriety is my God, my Judeo-Christian blah, 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 blah way of doing it and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, whoa, no, buddy. No, go back and read the beginning of the big book where it says there's more than one way to get comfortable with a power greater than yourself as you define it. And I've told them point blank, your version of God and how to find God will kill me because of my own belief systems and what I've learned in my own life. The rigid version of thou shalt not will kill me. It almost killed me once already. That's partly why I drank and drugged, because they were telling me I was a sinner and I did all this wrong stuff. No, other people did wrong stuff to me. But because they were a gender other than the gender I am, nobody, you know, don't talk, don't tell, don't get those boys in trouble. Blah, blah, blah. So I used to not feel the shame and disgrace that was put upon me. And sobriety meant finding a flavor I can live with. And it's funny because I said to my son, I'm going out back around to this paperwork of who's going to speak for me if a Mack truck runs me over. And one of them is the God question. What is your faith? And I said to my son, can I write dirt worshipping, tree hugging, agnostic, Wiccan, Celtic kind of a thing? And he said, no, they won't know what to do with you. Just write agnostic. I mean, and I said, well, if push came to real shove, maybe, you know, one of these younger, newer Catholic priests could come in the room. But because they're a little bit more tolerant and forgiving and loving than the old codgers were. But that's really going to push it. And even my sister, she was like, well, what do you mean? You're not going to have a Catholic funeral? And I said, no, probably not. No, because I don't like the rules. That's, you know. And she didn't like the rules either with my father's death, because we all wanted to spread a little ashes here, there, and the other in his favorite places. But the church said, no, if you do that, they won't bury him. I'm like, oh, crying out loud. So I'm going to keep doing my own thing, and it said, the paper does say agnostic, with Catholic written really small, just in case. And my son's the only person I listed as a contact, as someone to speak for me, because I don't trust my sister enough. I saw what she did to my dad. Nope. She was DPOA, and he suffered for an extra month because she wasn't ready. And that hurt. That hurt us all. So, but it woke me up. I learned. And I think I'm doing what God wants me to do. My way. Not my way, because my way is always going to lead me to trouble, but God's way. I don't have to fight. When it's God's way, I don't have to fight it. It just happens naturally, smoothly, easily. If I'm fighting something, it ain't my higher power's way. That means I'm making it happen, and that's bad, because no good will come. So that's where my very spinny head is at, and if you followed that from start to finish, congratulations, you're as confused and confounded as I am. Have a good night. Unless you made other plans.
Really, I'm going to come in on this before we close out. Good evening, family. Jamie, very grateful, recovered alcoholic. Good to be with all of you. There is a great advantage that reading our big book of Alcoholics Anonymous from the title page gives us. And if we read all of the black letters on the white pages in the big blue book, we just might get this thing. Night, Linda. One of the things that it tells us in the foreword to the second edition is that Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. So all of those of you who think it is, read the damn book. However, we are an organization of spiritual change and spiritual values. I don't care what your spiritual values are. It's not my business. It's not my business who your God is. It's my business who my God is. So the chapter to the agnostic gave me a pathway for me to be able to let go of old ideas and old beliefs and open my heart and mind to new ideas and new beliefs, because I too was raised with that religious God. And I say it all the time, I'm a recovering Mormon. So that's just as difficult as any other religion out there. But it also says in our book that if you come from faith, by all means feel free to return to faith. So the chapter to the agnostic leads me on a pathway to find faith in my life. I believe that I had a spiritual experience within each individual step. And how do I know that? Is because when I laid paralyzed in bed because of my alcoholism on September 3rd, 1990, I knew alcohol had me beat. I knew I couldn't do it alone. And I said a simple prayer. God, if you get me out of this, I will do anything. And I came to realize that that was step 1, 2, and 3 in that moment before ever getting to Alcoholics Anonymous. That in itself was a spiritual experience. And everybody's so busy looking for Bill's white light that he had that they're missing their own little white lights. And it could be as simple as mental goose flesh, a chill running up the back of your neck or your spine. I had hundreds of them in the times that I had been sober. I can't explain the power. I don't have to define the power, other than the fact for me that it's God, and I don't have to explain my God to you or anybody else. because he's unexplainable to you, but personal to me. And I think that's just as it should be. Even religious leaders say, well, I don't understand this God of your understanding. Here's the deal. I'm going to keep it so simple that any human being on the planet can get it. It is a place to start. And in my experience and my journey through the steps, what has happened is that starting point gave me a place to grow. There is not one place in my big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that says I get to do it my way. It also doesn't say I have to do it their way. These are suggestions. But personally, I like the results that the suggestions have produced. And you know what? After all these years, those suggestions continue to produce results. If this is a level in AA, why can't there be a level here and a level there and a level there? Into infinity. Because I believe that's what living in the fourth dimension truly is. It is a spiritual plane. And if not, I'm just Jackass Jamie, still doing the same thing that I've always done, trying to control and manipulate people to be the way that I want them to be. My opinions don't matter in Alcoholics Anonymous. Read my lips, my opinions don't matter. If I can't reconcile my experience in my journey in sobriety with the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, then I don't need to expose the newcomer or the old-timer to it, because you know what? There's just as many sick old-timers as there are newcomers. And believe me, folks, I don't have any of this. But I am a willing participant on my own journey. Step 4, I had a spiritual experience. Step 5, I had a spiritual experience. Every step I have taken, I have had a unique spiritual experience unto itself. Why? Because something inside of me changed, something inside of me shifted. And so much of that is a direct result of the chapter to the agnostic. Thank God for that pathway, otherwise I might not be sober today. And that chapter, if I want to continue to be agnostic, atheist, or whatever, that's fine. But you know what? If I say no, never, then I'm cheating myself out of an experience that could not only change my life, but change the lives of many around me for the better. We never know who we are going to touch in Alcoholics Anonymous or how we are going to touch them. I know this, if I got a manure spreader and I'm spreading manure, those people are going to run like hell. But Alcoholics Anonymous has given me the tools to put a spirituality spreader in my hands. And it happens one seed at a time. And they're choices. There is no part of who I used to be that I want in my life. Yet everything that ever happened to me throughout my life, including the stuff that never should have happened, is part of who I am today. And the God of my experience made all of that possible for me to change, for me to overcome, rather than continue to be a victim or to continue to be a survivor, because Alcoholics Anonymous gives me the tools to become an overcomer. But it's all about choices. I know that if I continue to grow, I will continue to change my relationship with God and my spiritual experience today in life look different in a year sober than it did when I came in from the room. It looked different at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And it continues to look different every day and continues to grow and evolve because of my willingness. It's not the who, but it's the how. Or not the how, but the who. Sorry. I'm reading it upside down here off of my ceiling. Who's the who? The who ain't Cindy Lou Who. The who becomes the God of our understanding, or in my case, the God of my experience. And why do I say the God of my experience? Because God has brought me through more pain, grief, guilt, shame, stupid decisions. And I never had to pick up a drink over it. Certainly lived in a lot of fear of some of it. And if you're new or whether you're old and you're struggling with this whole thing and trying to figure it out, I haven't found that page that says I got to figure it out. What I have found is it's already been figured out for me. But if you really truly believe that you got to control it and manipulate it, try this. I always read the book as it's written when I'm in groups, but when I'm reading it by myself in the way that I work with others, it gets read in the first person in order to insert me into the book. So if you're struggling with this program and what it has to say, even the God stuff, I got one question for you. How well did you like sex before you tried it? Well, you won't know a damn thing about the spiritual solution unless you try it either. Thanks. Want to close this out, Trish?
Yep. From page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thank you, Trish. And we got a real special way of closing out here, and we will do it for the 252nd time in a row. And then we'll come back and do it again next week. After a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering, raise your virtual hand if you would like to join us, and we will close out with the Lord's Prayer. Here's your moment. Thank you. Who will take us from shame to grace if we let him? Our Father,
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom
come, thy
thy
will
will
be
be done,
on
on
earth
earth
as it is in heaven. Give us
Give
this
us this
day
day
our
our
daily
daily
bread,
bread,
and
and
forgive
forgive
us
us
our
our
trespasses,
trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
for
For
thine
thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back because it works, but only if you work it.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Night, Lisa.
Hi, Steph.
Hey there.
Good night, everyone. We stay sober till we meet again. Good night.
Yeah.
Night, William.
Cindy, I got your message. I'll give you a call about that, okay?
What you got,
Have a
Steph?
good night. Thank you.
I have notes from last year, and I must ask the question, the quote at the end, but it says that I must ask, what does the contempt prior to investigation mean? And I have keeping it, the mind closed, ego and pride, pre-discrimination of an idea, unwillingly to look at something a different way. Having a conclusion before you have all facts. And Art said that I know it, I can't learn, you have nothing to teach me. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
It's because I don't know if I didn't know what contempt prior to investigation meant.
It means I'm not even willing to try.
And
Not even willing to learn your side, whatever information you have. Listen.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steph.
It means I'm unteachable.
Right.
And that would really
which is lack of humility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a discussion that I have with everybody that I work with at some point in our journey together. It comes right out of page 58, and I ask them if they are a cannot or a will not.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few cannots in the world. Maybe someone who's a total psychopath that has no moral compass. But generally, a child that was maybe born autistic or mongoloid or something that does not have the same capability of processing that each and every one of us do. And nobody can lie to me and say, I'm incapable of processing that because you lived long enough to get to Alcoholics Anonymous, so that's all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lie that everybody tells to themselves. So a cannot is someone that just does not have the mental capacity. Don't confuse mental capacity with honesty. Two different things entirely. That puts most of us in the class of being a will not. Nope, I'm not going to do that. I have a friend. I have a friend who claims to be an agnostic. And the truth is, agnostic just simply means without knowledge. That's all it really means. But this friend, who is one of the most angry human beings on the planet, who's a member of this program, I will fucking never. Well, guess what? You're right. You won't. Okay?
Sorry.
Because he keeps himself in the darkness and in the emotional pain just by that closed thought of I will never. Seriously, what do you got to lose? I'll tell you what you got to lose. Pride, ego, self-deprecation, abusing others. Those are not bad things to lose.
I don't.
The change is for free and it's for everybody. You know what? If today is my day to go and tonight's my last night on this planet, I want to know that I did the right things today. Not perfectly, but I still have hopefully done the right things today.